Here we go.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the MII TED Talk. We've just watched a video on how to give great feedback. The secret, indeed, a four-point plan set out by cognitive psychologist LeeAnn Renninger. We're now going to discuss that with the help of our panel, our expert panel of mediators from around the world, and how this concept of feedback and good feedback or positive feedback, whatever way you want to look at it, can have a role in mediation. We always start off with more or less the same question, which is, what do you think? Or give me one point, if you like, that really you picked up from that video that might be useful. So the first one on my list here is a chap called Michael Lang. Michael is a mediator with more than 40 years of experience in the areas of family, workplace, organisational, congregational and public policy disputes. He is the founding director of the Master of Arts programme in conflict resolution at Antioch University. Amongst other works, he is the author of the Guide to Reflective Practice in Conflict Resolution. So welcome, Michael. You watched that video. Can you give us one point that you think was particularly useful or would be helpful?
Well, thanks very much, Scott. I know that we're going to get into the details. What I was thinking as I watched the video is how often people resist the idea of giving or receiving feedback. It becomes a routinized, sanitized kind of process that ultimately has little value to either the giver or the receiver. And what LeeAnn Renninger is inviting us to do is to see feedback as an organic and essential process of building a relationship, building understanding, as well as communicating the content.
Yeah. You see that, and I do a lot of stuff in workplace, and you see that with managers. They're just
Yeah.
scared to take up that kind of process and give the feedback, and people are worried about getting it. And I know I'll bring in Avril next. I'll have to do a little introduction, Avril, before I can do that. Avril Sheridan is a former litigation solicitor of 22 years experience who has seen the light and is now a full-time mediator with particular expertise in the area of separating couples. With a focus on client-centric solutions, Avril is proud to offer her expertise in navigating complex family dynamics. Her background equips her to guide you through the intricacies of conflict resolution, ensuring a swift and effective path forward. This year, Avril was named the most professional mediator in South Dublin by the EU Business News Irish Enterprise Awards. Avril, before we came on line, we were chatting about in the workplace how you have some people anyway would have this year-end
Yeah.
review process, which is your one big feedback. And I suppose that was a theme that Michael brought up there, this fear of giving and receiving feedback. It must be particularly bad, in a situation where you've got this one-off thing. And of course, a one-off to some extent is what you get in mediation. Certainly the first meeting anyway. You know what you're going to get. So is there anything from the video or that you think might be relatable or anything along the lines that we were chatting about beforehand?
Well, obviously, like feedback is what I had associated with the work environment, the end of year return or whatever. And you think, oh God, we've got to get through this. And the manager would have exactly the same view. Oh yeah, what do we do? What do we say for this? Oh yeah, we better put in a number here. And it was all about a number process. Whereas in the mediation, it has a very different function in the mediation. And I think it's important to give feedback to the parties in a way that it can kind of move the mediation forward, in that you say, well, how do you think it went, or what do you think we can do to make it progress better going forward? So that's the kind of feedback I use in mediation. And that, it may be very wrong, but it's what I do. So I'd be interested to hear everybody else's view.
Okay, thank you very much, Avril. Who is next on my list? Next on my list is our president, Andrea O'Neill, president of the MII, founder of ACON Resolutions. She's an accredited MII mediator, which is good, and holds a Master's in Mediation and Conflict Intervention. She has had specialist training in separating couples, child inclusive mediation. Andrea is certified synergy conflict management engagement coach. She's also the MII lead for collaboration with the Irish Red Cross. So again, to you, Andrew, anything you want to pick up or any kind of theme that you're going to develop later on in this chat?
Yeah, no, I suppose that one of the things I was thinking about is, in relation to feedback and feedback, I suppose what we do as mediators is reframe all the time. And
Mhm.
really for feedback to be seen as an opportunity for learning, either about ourselves, our process, or even our clients, or for our clients to learn about each other. So I think how we frame feedback,
Yeah.
if we frame feedback as an opportunity for learning, and the tone and the way we approach it is really, really valuable within mediation and its process.
Okay, thank you very much to Andre. Next up, we have in my list Jenny. Jenny's the next one up in my list. Jenny Buzek is principal of the Collaborative Communication Group, an executive coaching, consulting, and mediation firm based in the Chicago area. For over 20 years, Jane has enjoyed engaging clients as a facilitator, coach, consultant, and mediator at every level and across multiple industries, including federal, state, and local government, medicine, law, manufacturing, and pharmaceutical marketing. Jane has mediated hundreds of cases ranging from gang crime to eviction to human rights charges. So, Jenny, we've heard from three others. So, Michael's chatting about resistance to giving feedback, and then we've had this move from Avril looking at is it a big thing, and then we're looking at Andrew bringing in with the clients and the way that we reframe feedback that we'll be discussing later. What about you? Anything that you've picked up or that you'd like to develop later on in the talk?
Absolutely. So what I picked up on was the her identification of blur words. And I think in the work that we all do in our training, in our practice, we are used to um, taking the labels that our participants give us. So things like disrespectful or irresponsible, things like this, and helping our parties understand what those mean, unpacking what does it mean for you? What does feeling disrespected mean for you? So I found that to be highly applicable to all of the work that we do in mediation.
Okay, so moving on from Andres, you're moving things forward, and one way to move things forward is to bring clarity, to remove remove the blur, to make it clean and tidy, and if you like, almost defined by the parties themselves. The final person on our panel, last but not least, is Elena Kuplik, who left her home country of Germany with her family in 2011 to live in the southwest of France, so here's in Bordeaux. In 2016, they lived in Ireland for a year and she discovered her love for our island and its people. Since 2019, she's been on the panel of mediators of Family Mediation NI in Belfast and is an registered international elder mediator. She's also CEDAR accredited and a member of the Association of European Mediators in Paris. Welcome, Ilona. Anything you'd like to develop or any points you want to take from initially from the video?
Yeah, thank you very much, Scott. I was just thinking, picking up the blur words. We said earlier when we were setting this up here today, labels, when people are using labels or things like words. And I said this thing like, we have two parents sitting there and somebody says something and then the rolling of the eyes, here we go again. Then when they hear the same thing again, what they already have heard when they were discussing or communicating or still communicating between them before coming to mediation. And to see this reaction and to pick it up and to be with them actually when then maybe mom rolls her eyes and says, "Oh God, here we go again." And to see this reaction, to pick it up and to ask, "Okay, what does it do to you, or how does it make you feel?" And for the other parent, then maybe then the dad who said something, to say, "Okay, what is it that you say this like this?" Or really like to kind of to try to unpack where this is coming from and to make them aware of something which is in between them, but really like to see it again, because sometimes they are just so much in this communication theme that they don't really listen to each other anymore. And this is also, and that's what she said in the video, it's about positive feedback as well, because I have sometimes parents and they don't hear when one parent says something nice or gives something positive away, like, oh, this weekend they came back, the kids have been really, really happy because you did this or that. But the other parent is like this because they're so much in defensiveness and so much in aggression so often that they don't hear that. And when I see that, though, I think that's the important thing for mediator to pick this up as well, to make them aware again that there was also something positive going on. No? So yeah. So it's not only negative feedback, but really also having a look at positive feedback.
Okay, so I suppose that's one of the points that LeeAnn Renninger in the video made was about the feedback which is too hard, in which case
Mm,
you get this negative response, you get the hit back,
mm,
and sometimes in mediation, and maybe sometimes maybe all the time, the parties are ready
yeah,
to be attacked, if you like. They're ready to get this harsh word coming, so they're ready to punch back. And the
yeah.
mediator's role is to somehow ameliorate that by giving them voice to set it out more softly. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, more softly if it's negative, of course, more softly or more comprehensible, so that the people are really understanding, okay, where's the other person coming from? Why is this person saying it like this? Or why is this person using these words? And or to say then, or to ask the parent, could you say that a bit differently? Could you explain? Could you evolve your thought there? So can you give us an example or things like this? Because our thing is that we make them understand each other and to bring them back together so that they can communicate then maybe later on directly to each other and not only through us, actually, and to break down this barrier with which they are coming most of the time into mediation because well communication is most of the time broken down. They have these rhythms and they using apps and so on not to avoid communication, and then we'll invite them to a mediation session and say, well, listen, it's all about communication, you have to talk to each other directly, but they have to learn to do this again. And that's also something we, by showing them, okay, we are really listening, we are asking questions, we really are curious, we want to understand what's behind your message here. We show them that this is possible because we, as a mediator, so if when we show that we are interested in what the parent has to say, then maybe this gives a little flame. Then again, that the other parent is interested in it as well. Yeah. So yeah, but it's. I didn't say that it's simple. No?
Thanks very much. Here, I'll bring back in Michael. Michael, you were chatting about the reluctance of some people to mediate, and Alona's been chatting effectively, if I'm picking her up right, about some kind of skills that mediators might use to almost reframe. And if you're doing that, you're helping the party hear what the other person's saying, I suppose. But
Mm.
is there anything you want to develop there about either the reluctance or some of the things that you've heard from the other panelists so far?
Well, I want to, if I can, Ilona, just add a slightly different dimension
Mhm.
that is consistent with what you've been saying about the parties sort of being rigid with one another, not being
Mm.
able to hear one another because they have built up these stories.
Yeah.
And if somebody says something that's inconsistent with the story, they disregard it because the story is more important than the new information. And I want to think about it also in terms of me as the mediator, soliciting feedback for a couple of reasons. One, it helps me better understand what it is that I'm doing that may be useful and
Mm.
constructive, or what interventions I might be using that were particularly unhelpful to the parties. And secondly, it builds it reinforces the notion of self-determination. So I begin in the opening by inviting them continually to ask questions and to give feedback to me at any
Mm.
time. I ask them, so you can stop at any time and ask me what I'm doing and why, and I will give you an answer because this is for you. I'm doing this for your benefit. And then either periodically and definitely at the end of every session, ask for feedback, invite it by
Mm.
saying, as you look back on the last hour or however long we've spent together, what is it that happened that you thought to yourself, well, this is okay. this might work. And what happened that made you think maybe this isn't going to work? Maybe this is going to be a problem. And it gives us then an opportunity to converse about those things and allows me to make adjustments as necessary.
Yeah, that was
In other words, I don't have to do all the thinking because
Very good. Yeah,
they
perfect.
are, we're working together. I am an expert in certain things, but they are an expert in who they are and their lives and their futures.
Yeah, that was it was a classic LeeAnn Renninger way of giving feedback to Lona there. May I add to what you've said? But I'm interested there in the way that you're framing that or phrasing that, if you like, which is going back again to what was on the video, which is giving someone autonomy. You're bringing them in and bringing them into you're making those decisions. You're making answers. What was it that makes this memorable, or what was it that made it okay? Is really it's setting things in their head. It's sticking things in their head as well, isn't it? It's really helping them progress, which is one of the themes we've had, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, people are terrified when they come to me. It's not only they're terrified about being in the room with one another, perhaps, but certainly if they've never been in mediation, they're confused. It's unfamiliar. It's strange. They don't know the role. And for them to realize that they have agency is really a powerful intervention that we can offer.
Okay, thank you. I'll bring in Andre
Thanks,
next.
Scott.
You've heard what Michael said and the others there on the importance of, if you like, getting feedback on how you're doing, um, which is, I suppose, a technique. Hopefully, you're going to get good stuff coming through. But are there anything else that you'd want to say on that, Andrea, about the whole thing about either receiving feedback or giving feedback in a
Yeah, I think there's
positive way?
two, there's like, well, there's actually 3 points now because of the way you framed the question. But I suppose the first point based on the video is preparation. So preparing. So in our individual sessions, when we meet with clients, what we're doing is we're preparing them for feedback as well. And we're also preparing them to give feedback. So in a way, we're providing an element of coaching to help them frame it in a way that can be received by the other person, but also to actually ask them the question, what is it you think that other person might want you to hear or say to you in the room? And that again is, if we go back to the neuroscience, if we hear something for the first time when we're in that joint session and it's something that we feel as judgment or an attack, we're going to shut down. We're not going to engage. And especially if it's something that maybe unstabilizes our sense of identity or our status or our sense of certainty. So if we prepare our clients in the room to give and to receive feedback, well, then when they go into the joint session, they're able to hear it more openly. And hopefully in our individual session, we've managed to reframe it in a different way and maybe move. I know Ken Cloak talks about moving from the accusation to the request. So that, I mean, the prime example is you're lazy to, I need some more support with the workload, so it's trying to help frame the feedback so that it can be received in a way that doesn't cause a disconnect or a shutdown. So that's the piece around preparation that she talked about first. And then if we go into the element of, I suppose, the mediator or the mediation session being a session where in some way the mediator is often an educator or a teacher. And it provides a space for the parties to learn from how we behave so they can mirror the way we interact with them. So I know at the start of that conversation, Confucian was mentioned and the whole philosophy around that. Interestingly, I went to uh, see one of his temples in Vietnam this year, but he has 4 core principles in relation to feedback. And these very much are in line, Michael, with what we do in reflective practice. And it's, watching others, and learning from doing, and also being able to for inner correction. So actually that sometimes negative feedback is good because it offers an opportunity to reflect internally and go, okay, why did I ask that question? What about that question? what was I looking for from the clients? Was I trying to lead them in a direction? Was I trying to, was it my agenda or was it their agenda? And actually to learn as a mediator for ourselves. So that inner reflection is really, really important. So negative feedback is good. It's not bad. It's an opportunity to learn. And I suppose then one of the other principles from that philosophy is to speak with kindness and to allow a space for continuous learning. And I think when we as mediators speak with kindness and without judgment, we allow the parties or the clients to also speak from a place of kindness as well. They mightn't necessarily feel like that when they come into us first in the individual sessions. They might feel very angry and very hard done by, and very much feel that the impact is on them and that they are the victim. And in some ways they might be. But by allowing the space to prepare them for that joint session so that they can hear the other person and receive feedback and also give feedback, it allows that space for connection. But I think it's also just as important for the mediator to be able to receive that feedback, positive and negative, and to be able to go away and use their reflective practice group or their reflective, their own self-reflection to gain some inner learning as well in relation to their practice.
Very much, Andrew. There's quite a bit of that to unpack there. Avril, you're on mute, by the way. But looking at that, I think if I'm picking up what Andrew's saying, an awful lot of the heavy lifting and conditioning, if you like, is done in the one-to-one. It's done in the pre-meeting before you bring people together. So whilst you can't in mediation tell somebody what they're going to say, you can, if you like, this mirroring thing that Andrew's chatting about, you can impact on the way that feedback's going to be given.
Yeah.
You're on mute there, Avril.
Yeah, she needs permission to
You
unmute.
need permission. All right. I don't know if
Sorry, who was it, Scott?
Avril needs permission to come in.
Okay.
Allowed.
There you go, Avril.
Yes,
Off
yes,
you go.
yeah.
Give
Yes,
me
I'm
some
sorry.
feedback on that.
I was busy trying to speak.
Yeah. So
now
heavy lifting
I
in the
lost
one-
some of Andre's stuff, and yeah. So
Okay.
I'm behind everybody.
Right, you're behind everybody. Well, what we're talking about is different. The importance, if you like, or the value of negative feedback and how it can be very important, but also how we can, as mediators, if you like, influence what happens in the joint session, in the one-to-one, in the pre-meetings, if you like, or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
meetings. So, any comments along things like that?
I sometimes even in the joint sessions, I'm kind of will do it in the joint sessions in that I'll sort of say, I think we'll try and reset because it got a little bit negative and I don't think that was good for the progress. See, I'm always about the progress. I haven't driven mad about progress. But so I said, I think we need to reset. Could we try different rules for the next while? Could we try when so-and-so says that, I'll, and you go through the same rules again, but it's kind of a reminder to reset everybody, including yourself, because sometimes when things get negative, you can feel yourself also getting negative. So you have to reset and just reset the start, So I do that, particularly in very conflictual ones. I sort of say, I think let's just talk about resetting now. We're going to be starting another session again. Let's set down the ground rules or whatever, because I kind of observed we didn't make progress and we have to kind of break the log jam. So that's what I do. But because I think other than that, it just gets very corrosive if you don't start resetting.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'm going to bring in Jenny again,
Okay.
and then what we'll do is I see Tony's putting a question. If anyone else has any questions, you want to drop them in the chat, and then we might get you on. But Alison will have to give you permission, I think, to come in. So Jenny, following on from what Avril's chatting there, you were chatting about the blur words. She's chatting about resetting. It's not a homeopathic occupation being a mediator. There is a role there, but at the same time, it's a fine line between, enabling and leading. So is there anything on that whole feedback or anything else you want to say?
Yeah.
And then we'll move to Tony's question.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Just based on what the other panelists are saying, I have so many different thoughts that are in my mind. But the first one is, I think the first one is, well, first I want to recommend a book that I just absolutely adore called Thanks for the Feedback. It comes out of the Harvard Negotiation Project, and it's written by Sheila Heen and Douglas Stone. Um, and when I think about feedback, it's never about I guess I try to help. I don't do a lot of the pre work for my process. I do most of my work in joint session, or try to. So I know every process is different. Um, but one thing that I try to help the parties do is recognize that when we're receiving feedback or receiving something negative or giving, it's not about us, right? If somebody says, Janie, you're so messy. I'm looking around at my desk right now. You are so scattered, or you're so disorganized, or whatever label or blur word they want to use. I could get defensive, and I love her talk about the role of the amygdala, right? I call it amygdala hijack. I read that somewhere. Um, but it's not about me. It's about how it's impacting the other person. So helping parties and ourselves realize if somebody says something negative about you, um, it's not about you. It's about how it makes the other person feel, and trying to help the parties kind of get to that point so that they can use the feedback or that negative information as data or information. She calls it data points that will help them move forward.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Well, we've got lots of things coming out here, and I see Tony Carney's written a question, so I'll put this to you, Michael. Isn't every form of communication, including body language, or indeed the lack of it, a form of feedback as it conveys information about where things and the parties and also the mediator are placed at any given moment? Can we therefore look at it neutrally without good or bad or right or wrong or even positive or negative and explore how to move forward from there? What do you say, Michael?
Well, thanks, Tony. I hope that everyone here has the next 3 hours to be able to respond to that incredibly full question.
Yeah.
Let me just say, I agree in general at the outset with the premise. What I understand, Tony, the premise of your question. If we are good at our work, at least for us as mediators, every piece of data is feedback. We're paying attention, we're learning, and we, as a result of the learning, we have the opportunity to test our understanding with the parties to learn what the behavior means. The classic, someone's crying. Well, do we reach for a box of tissues? Why? Why do we do that? Why not say what's going when the person can speak? What's this about? What does this mean for you? Because that's what I need to understand. I don't need them to stop crying. Stopping crying may be good in some ways, but it tells me nothing. And it doesn't necessarily help them because they haven't been understood. So I do agree that all of this is feedback for us. I think the only distinction I would make is whether the feedback happens organically, just as part of the interaction between two people or a group of people, or it happens very purposefully, where the parties are interacting, the two people or more are interacting for the specific purpose of asking some questions and gaining some clarity and some understanding. I think that's the only difference. But if otherwise, I would say yes. The simple answer to your question is yes.
Good. Do you want to come in, Tony? You'd have to get unmuted. So yeah, can you unmute Tony, please, Alison? Alison?
Yeah, I've unmuted him.
There you go. On you go, Tony. Still can't hear you.
Still can't hear him, yeah.
He's not on mute.
No, you're not on mute. No. This is going to look great on the video, though. Maybe you got that feedback,
right.
yeah.
No.
Maybe he's got the volume down, maybe.
No, it'll be his input needs to change.
Oh, maybe.
We'll come back. You try and fix something, Tony, and we'll come back to you. If you hear anything, we'll know that you're back on. So what I would say is I was on a session with Tony there a month or two ago, and
Yes,
he came up with a little thing called KFC, you might have heard of, which is be kind, be fair, and be constructive, if I remember rightly, as a kind of way of, I suppose, asking people if they are giving feedback. I suppose that would be one way to look at it. Andre, you've got your eyes open and you're looking lively.
I'm
Do you
always
mind if I say
lively.
that? There you
Always
go. Give
lively,
some
Scott.
feedback there. You look like you were going to come in and save me from this tumble
No, do you
woman
know,
of
I
Tony
was
not being able
actually
to speak.
I was actually thinking of Tony's question and the positive and negative, and I don't know whether the word maybe is constructive and deconstructive. So we have a constructive way of communicating and a destructive way of communicating, and sometimes we don't know it's destructive. It was very interesting. I was doing mediation last week, and there was this couple in front of me, and they were. It wasn't the end of a marriage, or it wasn't anything like that. It was to do a different topic. But interestingly enough, something came into the room where they had avoided the conflict, because they wanted to keep the peace. So they hadn't said what they really felt because they were trying to keep the peace. So they had avoided, right? So we had to look at that and then say, well, what is it that you really wanted the other person to do at that time? And then ask the other person, what is it that you needed to hear at that time? And then go back and you're saying, well, what would that have been like for you to hear that? Okay, so actually what you were doing was helping them move from that destructive, because it was, even though it was avoiding conflict and it was creating a peaceful situation, it was only doing that for a certain gap in time, but it was going to eventually be deconstructive. So it was going to, eventually kind of break down their communication and their possibly their relationship. So by asking them to provide feedback to each other and asking questions that help them deliver that feedback to each other, they were able to say, okay, so in the future, this is the way we're going to address these things with each other. So they learned a constructive way to give feedback to each other. So I think there is a difference. So maybe not positive and negative. I mean, the deconstructive way wasn't necessarily negative because it was positive for a certain period of time, but actually in the long term, it was going to be destructive. So they needed to move to constructive. So again, going back into using our questions, using reflective questions and open questions, giving them the autonomy to figure out what would work for them and allowing them the autonomy to come up with a constructive way of communicating with each other and giving each other feedback. So I think that kind of ties in a bit with Tony's question, and then Michael, with the huge amount of work Michael does in relation to reflective practice that we do as mediators, but not being afraid to use those reflective style questions when you're working with people in the room.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. I'll bring in Alona now. So we've had this issue about, I suppose, that Tony raised about everything that we're doing is effectively feedback, and we can either be attuned to it or pick up on certain things and use that. And Andre is bringing in, I suppose it's the kind of Thomas Kilmann avoidance space that some people are in, and it works in some ways. But in order to move on, it had to be unpacked to so at least recognize where they are and the feedback that you're trying to give. Is there anything you'd like to develop there, Alona, either on that or something else that you've picked up on?
Yeah, just to develop a little bit on this, I think we could even go so far, or at least that's what I do in when the parents are ready to have agreements and we are writing it up and we are going through hopefully the mediated agreement together in the last session. they're not always thinking themselves of putting something into the immediate agreement, like what do we do when we will have problems in the future?
Mm-hmm.
And it's hopefully the only moment where I not suggest, but when I try to get them to the thinking, okay, listen, have a look back where you have been, when you came to mediation, and how much progress you have done. So progress is something we have maybe haven't picked up yet in the session today. But so where do you see each other maybe in 6 months, in a year, or when another problem comes up? So how do you want to handle it? And then most of the time, as they have learned through this learning curve, through going through the mediation, that they are able to figure out their things, even though the mediator was there. But to have this trust built again between the two of them, or even if it's more multi-party, that they see, okay, we are able to do it, and we saw that we have done it even with the mediator or whatever. But then to put something into the mediated agreement, like, okay, what do we do if we go into trouble again? So do we go back to mediation, or do we want to talk about the strategies? What did we learn from this? And really like to have a little resume. And I really have got so much positive feedback regarding this, that they say, oh, we learned so much about each other, but also how to communicate differently. And well, it's not always rosé, of course, but it depends where they have been. But just the last couple I had in Belfast, they really, like, after the first, or in the middle of the first session, I just thought, okay, no, I have to end this. And they had a fantastic mediated agreement, and they were so happy with it. And and that felt really like that, okay, they have something in the hand, and they will navigate the future, and that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think that's something we can provide them with: building trust, and learning how to communicate to each other again.
Okay, thank you, Ilona. I'll bring in Avril now. If I'm
Yeah.
even Ilona right, that this is reality testing at some stage.
It is, yeah.
But
Yeah.
also empowering the parties. You hope the question, what are you going to do if this happens in the future, is it won't happen in the future. But at least you're also going to
Yes.
get the point.
Yeah.
We will have some kind of system for dealing with conflict
Yeah.
that won't presumably be avoiding, right? If we were looking at Andrew's point.
Yeah.
So anything in there, Avril, that you'd like to say
Yeah.
about this?
No, I think I'm stress test them at the, as we're getting to the agreement stage. How will you cope going forward if there are any conflicts? And this is, oh, we're able to deal with conflicts now. So, well, just tell me, how are you going to deal with it? Because we'll put it into the mediated agreement. And they start actually setting up rules themselves that are going to work. And they come up with very good ideas of what will work in their situation. So I am inclined to let them lead on that. They know what has worked in the mediation, and they will use that going forward. It kind of also, it gets them into that frame of mind, which is critical, because if the next 20 years together,
Yeah. So again, this is a theme of autonomy that's coming back through empowering people. This is part of our job. It's not ours to come up with the ideas and fix them and be fixers. That's interfering. That's going way too far. And Michael, I suppose bringing back in you mentioned in dispatches by Andre about the reflective questions and tying that in with reflective practice. You've heard about from the other two there, just chatting about, I suppose, empowering people. And you've mentioned that before. And I'm looking at Tony's follow up here. Thanks, Michael. That was great feedback. A point I was making lightly is that words like feedback and positive and negative can become blur words, tying back what Janie was chatting about, due to overuse that can in fact reinforce fixed positions. Following up there, is it not true that if someone says to us, can I offer you some feedback?
Yeah.
We probably have a thinking feeling of, uh-oh, Here comes something negative. Over to you,
Yeah,
Michael. What do
yeah.
you think?
Well, first of all, one of the things we all know is that people who have a relationship, it may be in the workplace, maybe in the community, maybe a family situation, they develop codes for how they communicate with each other. And words that have significance for them, we may think of as quite neutral. And that's one of the things that we must really pay attention to and be fearless in asking when you use that phrase, I noticed that the other person had a particular response. Talk to me about what that word means to the two of you. Help
Yeah.
me understand your language, because if I do, I can help you avoid words that are likely to set one of you off or make you or cause you to be defensive, um, or to find words that or expressions that are going to be more helpful. So I think all of this leads back to the idea that um, we're the outsiders.
Mm.
Yeah.
We know so little
Yeah.
about what's happening. We think we're so darn smart.
Mhm.
And we are. We are experts in being able to effectively manage a process and
Mm.
help people talk constructively together. But in terms of that dispute and those people, we are novices. We know nothing. We're little toddlers, if that. And we have a lot of catching up to do in order to be able to do that. And the way in which we can do that is not just simply through our capacity to observe and try to make sense of things, but it is to invite them to describe to us what it is that they mean, how they are engaging with one another, um, and give us the information we need in order to be useful to them.
Okay, thank you, Michael. I'll
You
bring in
know,
Jamie.
just for
Sorry, go
example,
on.
meeting separately or meeting apart
Yeah.
Mm.
have different meanings to parties than it does to us. And many mediators will say, okay, I think it's time to meet separately. I go, what? You forgot other people in the room. It's not just your decision.
Mm.
And you can give them the feedback to say, here's what I was thinking. I observed the following. And as a result of having observed the following, it occurs to me that it might make sense for, for me to meet separately with each of them. What do you think? So altogether different than the mediator saying, I run the process, just trust me.
Yeah.
And I'm being blunt about that part because I don't think any of us are going to be that ham-handed in the way we would deal with people.
Okay. Can I bring in Janie there, just following on from that? Because if we all have biases, we all have opinions. If
Mhm.
somebody has said something and picking up from what Michael's saying, it caused a reaction in the other person, we're probably thinking to ourselves, you did that intentionally. You know that's a dagger word, right? But we can't say that. We
Mm.
can't say it in the
Mm.
joint
Mm.
session. So following on from that, what are the kind of ways that you would hold back, but also move the thing forward? And I'm picking up on Michael and all the other speakers here today. Largely in giving feedback, we're giving the power to the individual. We're inviting them in by
Yeah.
questions. Seems to be one of the themes that's coming through here. Anything in there? No, I can see Michael's want to come back in, but I'll go to you first, Jenny.
Yeah. I'm gonna pivot just a minute. Because I want to bring in something that Tony brought up, which is sort of the labeling of positive and negative. And one of the things, everybody has the reason why they do this, right? Or what's what they're passionate about. And what I'm passionate about as a mediator and facilitator and all that is to help people normalize conflict. It's not bad or good. We're human. We are always we're an organism. So we are always in conflict in one way or another. So helping them normalize that this is going to happen again, and sort of I can't remember if it was Avril or Malona, but talking about the intentionality of saying, like, what I will say to people, maybe it's ham-handed, I don't know, but I will say, okay, so we are all human. This is at the stage where they're coming up with their resolution or their agreements. We are all human, so things are going to go sideways. Let's just put that out there. They're going to go sideways in some way or another. It's hard to change behaviors no matter what our intentions are. What are some of the things you think might go sideways? And then allow them to sort of identify, well, I'm worried that, blah, 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 so that you can get to the stage where they've uncovered every little stone and normalized uncovering that, so that they have a process moving forward. So that's what I wanted to say. I suppose, to your point, Scott, if I'm going to assume, I don't want to assume that somebody's saying something to say piss somebody off or not. I assume that they probably are. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. It doesn't really matter to me, but I do know that the reframing that we've talked about before is so powerful so if somebody says about the other person, well, he's just a jerk and he's just trying to make me whatever, and I think he's lazy, right? And you think, well, that, you're thinking internally, well, wow, lazy is quite a label. So kind of getting back to helping them get back to, well, it sounds like you're really upset about this. What is it what's the impact on you when this person does that? I'm just making it up. And kind of getting back to it and assuming even if there's ill intent, that's okay. You can, somebody else said, we're modeling behavior for them as well. So there's ways to talk about, he can feel, that person's lazy, but really what they're talking about is, this is how I feel. This is how it impacts me.
Okay, thank you very much. Here we're nearing the end. We have 5 minutes left, so maybe get a final thoughts from you there. I was struck, Michael, I'll come to you first because you were looking to come back on something. Just even the word that Jenny used there, things might go sideways, is very different from things might go awry, things might go wrong, things might not go the way you like, whatever. It's a nicer word. But everyone knows what it is, or I think everyone does. Maybe they don't. But any final thoughts on feedback, the role of feedback in mediation for the mediator or for the parties?
So here's what I was thinking, and as Scott, and thank you for, is what if I say to you, Scott, you're terrific. You are great. I'm grateful to you for organizing and moderating these. You're creative, inventive, and if I stop there, it's nice, feels good. I'm sure any of us who received that.
Yeah.
But what if I follow on and say, some of the things that I particularly appreciate are your ability to track 5 different people's comments and help us and everyone else find common threads among them. And that's a tremendous skill to be able to do that, to both see what's happening in the moment, but also have a broader vision for what that moment means to the entire conversation. That's different feet. I mean, every word that I just said, I mean with my heart, Scott. But I want to make the distinction between the types of feedback where I'm not just using blur words, but trying to be really specific. And I'll stop there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's I'm Scottish, so that's not easy to hear. I've never liked compliments for me, but I know the importance of giving them, and I can't say the word specific. It's I can't say corollary either. I can't say it right. I don't know what it is. So yeah. Without bombing me up too much, Andre, any final thoughts from you on the importance of feedback and mediation?
Yeah, well, of course, Scott, I second everything that Michael says, but I think really from the discussion we had today, like the piece around language is really, really important. And I think if we had longer, that piece around codes, the family codes, the individual codes, we all bring different codes. So it's like as if we all have the one language, but we've different dialects, and we bring that from our family, our experiences in life, and everything else. And so decoding them, that's it. That would be a great topic all on its
Yeah,
own.
it would be.
And learning for ourselves as mediators is so important, but also learning for the people that are with us. And actually, as Janie said, like there's, none of us are perfect. We all make, we all fail at some stage, but it's about failing forward and actually normalizing that and saying that that's okay. And maybe the question is, where's the double loop learning for the people that are in front of us? So how are you going to give feedback to each other when things are not right? So just to accept that that is a given. Yes, so yeah, so I think that's probably it for me. Scott, I'll let you go on to somebody else.
That's fine. I will go to Avril.
Oh,
Any
yeah.
final thoughts?
Yeah, no, some people have corrected me for this, but other mediators, but I always, if the clients are making progress, I say, well done, you did wonderful on the session, you both did great work, you had all the groundwork done, it was so positive, we were able to move forward. And so I always give, now if there's no positive feedback to give, I give none. I don't give negative feedback. Other than sort of say, we need to get this work done. So we really need it for the next day. But I've been corrected for that, and people have said, no, you should never say something complimentary to clients. And I just, I kind of disagree. But anyway, so I just want to see what other people's views are.
Okay, no problem. So you're celebrating little wins. Alona, final thoughts?
No, I give positive feedback as well. I really I always say, like as the couple I was talking about earlier, I said, well, I see that you worked so hard for this to make this happen, and it's really wonderful. And like as they are relieved that it's done, but also that they have a good outcome. So I am relieved, of course, as well, and very happy about it. And I really share that with them. It's very important. Yeah, I think that too. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So we're now getting on the positive stuff. Jenny, I'm going to end with you. Finish on a positive note, would you please?
Absolutely. Well, other than that, you're awesome, Scott, which I know
You're fabulous.
That's much more
You're
succinct
fabulous.
feedback,
Don't
much
change.
more succinct than Michael's. That's great. There we go.
Labels, blur words. The only thing I want to say is that what Andrea said about I haven't thought about this, and I don't really include this in part of my process, but you're absolutely right in that whatever feedback we give, we want to help empower them. And sort of this is in what, Michael's perspective of empowering the parties or the participants to give each other how would they like to move forward? How do they like to be communicated with when something does go sideways? And getting very intentional about helping them work that out, so they have something to look back on when the amygdala kicks in, right? When the amygdala, when they're all lizard brain and everything. So thank you for that, Andrea.
Okay, thank you to the entire panel. Thank you to all for turning up. And if you're watching this recording, then thank you for watching the recording. And Merry Christmas, Happy New Year when it comes, as they say in Scotland. And we'll see you in 2026, folks.
Yes,
You
thank
take
you.
care.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.